My name is Liam, and for most of my 31 years I have called Havenwood, West Virginia my home, a place where the mountains hug you tight and everyone knows your family history better than you do. I was always the quiet kid, the one who preferred a sketchpad and a set of pencils over a football. Art was my escape and eventually, my ticket out. I moved to a bigger city, chasing a dream of being a graphic designer, a world that felt a million miles away from the slow, steady rhythm of Havenwood. I landed a junior position at a bustling creative agency, a place filled with sharp, ambitious people who all seemed to have an unshakable confidence I could only dream of. I felt like a small-town boy who had wandered into the big leagues by mistake, a constant hum of imposter syndrome buzzing under my skin. That is where I met Ellie. She was magnetic, with a fire in her eyes that told a story of defiance. She told me bits and pieces about her past, about growing up in a very traditional and strict Muslim society, a world she had fought tooth and nail to leave behind. She had cut off her family, she said, to chase this modern life of career, independence, and dating who she pleased. I admired her courage, the sheer force of will it must have taken to build a new life from scratch. We were friendly, office-friendly at least, sharing jokes by the coffee machine and complaining about deadlines. I saw her as a fellow traveler, someone else trying to carve out a place for themselves in a competitive world. One afternoon, Ellie approached my desk with a dazzling smile. She was working on a huge freelance project, she explained, and was swamped. She had a small but crucial piece of design work she needed done and wondered if I would be interested. She said my style was perfect for it. I was flattered. Someone I admired thought my work was good. Then she mentioned the payment. It was ridiculously low, barely enough to cover a week's worth of groceries. The confident part of me knew it was an insult, but the Havenwood kid with the imposter syndrome just felt grateful to be asked. I thought maybe this was just how the industry worked. You had to pay your dues. So I said yes. I poured my heart into that commission, working late nights, perfecting every line and color palette. I was proud of what I created. I sent it to her, she paid me the small fee, and I pretty much forgot all about it. A few years passed. I had moved on to a different, better company, and my confidence had finally started to catch up with my skills. One day, I got an email from a stranger, a project manager from some tech startup. He had attached a screenshot of the very design I had made for Ellie. It was on my online portfolio, a showcase of my best work. He asked a simple question. "Is this piece 100% your work?" I confirmed it was. He replied with a short, sharp message saying that explained a lot and thank you. Confused, I pressed him for more details. He eventually told me the story. Ellie had been hired to lead a major design project for their company. The piece I had created was presented as her own work, a key part of her portfolio that helped her land the massive contract. She had not hired me for a commission. She had outsourced a part of her own job and paid me a tiny fraction of what she was earning, claiming my creativity as her own. The project, he added, had eventually fallen apart and was never released, which was probably why I had never seen my work out in the wild. I felt a cold wave of anger wash over me. It was not about the money, not really. It was the deception. She had used my insecurity and my trust against me. She had looked me in the eye and lied, making me an unwitting accomplice in her fraud. I thought about confronting her, but we no longer worked together and had not spoken in years. The project was dead. So I did what I thought was the mature thing. I let it go. I told myself it was a lesson learned. But the anger never truly faded, it just settled deep in my gut, a hard little stone of resentment. I worked even harder after that, determined to build a reputation so solid that no one could ever question my work or my integrity again. I became a lead designer, then a creative director. I was good at my job, I was respected, and the memory of Ellie's betrayal became a distant but still stinging memory. Then, one Tuesday morning, the past walked right through the front door of my office. My company was hiring for a senior designer position, and I was part of the interview panel. As I flipped through the list of final candidates, I saw her name, Ellie. My heart hammered against my ribs. During the interview, she was just as charming and confident as I remembered. She answered every question perfectly. She talked about collaboration and integrity, and I had to physically bite my tongue to keep from scoffing. The other managers were impressed. They saw a polished, experienced professional. I saw a fraud. They were leaning towards hiring her. "Liam, you have been quiet," my boss, Sarah, said after Ellie left. "What do you think? She seems like a strong candidate." This was my moment, the low point. I could stay silent. I could let her into my professional life again, let her work down the hall from me. I imagined the daily anxiety, wondering what corners she was cutting, what ideas she was stealing. Or I could speak up. I could tell them what I knew and risk looking like I was holding a petty grudge from years ago. I pictured Ellie's dismissive smile when I had tried to talk to her about the project years ago, how she had made me feel small and insignificant. All that progress I had made, all that confidence I had built, it all felt fragile in that moment. It felt like she could tear it all down again. I took a deep breath. "Sarah," I started, my voice steady despite the storm inside me, "there is something you need to know about her professional history." I laid it all out. The freelance project, the tiny payment, the discovery years later that she had presented my work as her own to land a major contract. I was factual, calm, and tried to keep any personal anger out of my voice. I focused on the core issue, plagiarism and professional dishonesty. My colleagues were silent, their expressions shifting from impressed to concerned. They thanked me for my honesty. The next day, I learned they had sent Ellie a polite rejection email. A wave of relief washed over me. The threat was neutralized. I had protected my team and my company. I had stood up for myself. I admit a small, dark part of me felt a surge of satisfaction. I thought to myself, that is what you get. I considered it a small act of petty revenge, a bit of professional karma, and then I moved on. My world was back to normal, safe, and secure. About a year later, I was at a conference and bumped into an old coworker, a guy named Mark who had worked with both me and Ellie at that first agency. We caught up over a beer, talking about our careers and old times. Casually, I asked, "Whatever happened to Ellie? I saw she applied for a job at my place last year, but it did not work out." Mark's friendly expression faded. He took a long sip of his beer. "Oh man, that is a sad story, Liam." He told me that the rejection from my company had been the final straw for her. Her freelance career had dried up. She had been struggling to find a stable job for a while, and her dating life was a series of disappointments. That one last no was the thing that broke her. She had given up. She had packed her bags, left the city, and returned home to her family, the very people and the strict life she had fought so hard to escape. She was back in that world where her independence meant nothing. He said the last he heard, she was 29 years old, and after having lived on her own and had boyfriends, her parents were arranging her marriage, trying to find any man who would have her. My stomach dropped. The satisfaction I had felt turned to acid. I thought I had just closed a door on her career, a door she had tried to pry open with a lie. But I had not. I had slammed it shut and locked it, sending her tumbling back into a life she considered a prison. I had intended to serve a small, cold dish of revenge. Instead, I had delivered a life sentence. The victory I thought I had won now felt like a devastating loss. I had protected my integrity, but in doing so, I had completely and utterly ruined her future, and the weight of that consequence is something I carry with me every single day.